in our books on page 454, 9.8. All right, I see pretty much everybody's book open. Make sure your books are open to page 454. All right, the first thing you need to know about calculating simple interest is the formula. The formula to calculate simple interest is interest equals principal times rate times time. Or more simply, I equals PRT. Now, I've given you an example here. You don't have to write this part down in your notes, but you do need the formula. All right, it says a $500 deposit earns 6% simple annual interest for 4 years. So in red, I've highlighted, okay, the $500 is the principal. Whatever amount of money you're putting into an investment or that you're taking out for a loan, either way you look at it, that's the principal amount. The percentage is what we call our rate. And the time, and get this, okay, because not always it's going to be in years. The time is calculated annually. What does that mean? Does annually mean monthly? Yearly. It means yearly, okay? So if they don't give me the time in years, say they give me the time in months, I have to put it out of 12 months because it's calculated annually. You'll see that in some of the examples that we do in a minute, okay? So how do I calculate interest? I multiply 500 times the decimal equivalent of 6%, so 0.06, times the length of time in years. Well, in this case, it's 4 years, so I don't have to do anything except just multiply by 4. When I multiply all the way across, I get $120. What does that mean? That means that this investment over a 4-year period of time makes me $120 in interest. Okay? I don't need comments. Okay? All right, so that's the formula. Now, in example 1, let's look at this problem. It says Tim's parents lent him $100 so he can buy a radio-controlled airplane. They charged him 5% simple annual interest. What will the total amount? What will be the total amount that Tim will owe his parents after 1 year? Okay, so what I need to do is I need to use my simple interest formula, I equals PRT. And now I want to identify what numbers in the word problem represent which variables in the formula. Now, I had kids tell me earlier, well, I just get messed up whenever I'm looking at word problems. Okay, I understand that sometimes when you see a word problem style question, that you want to just check out and you think, oh, there's no way I can understand this, okay? But there's a way that you can pick this apart so that you can figure out what numbers go where. The first thing you want to ask yourself is, what is $100? What variable would that represent? What do you think? Is it P, is it principal, rate, or time, or interest? It's the principal. It's the initial amount of money. That's always going to be my principal. So I'm just going to kind of label it with a P. This just helps me mentally remember where it goes. And then the 5% stands for the what? Rate. It's the rate. All right, and then my time is what? It's 1 year. So now I'm going to plug these numbers into my formula. 100, and with the rate, we're automatically just going to change that to a decimal. We're at the point now where we know when we multiply a number by a percentage, we have to change it to its decimal value. Okay, so we're just going to automatically do that. And then times 1 year. What's 100 times 0.05? 5. It's $5. Okay, but does this answer the question? It says, what will be the total amount that he owes after 1 year? Was he borrowed 100, does it make sense that he would only owe $5? No, it doesn't. So once we calculate the interest, now we go back and we add that to the original amount that he borrowed. So now the original amount was $100. The amount in interest was $5. So the total amount that he owes is $105. Now let me ask you this. This is on more practical, real life terms, okay? When would you want to find the lowest interest rate. In what type of real life scenario where you're going to be dealing with money and interest rates would you want a low interest rate?
Car.
When you're buying a car. You don't want to be paying high interest rate because then you're paying more for the car. What else? A house, right? Any type of situation in which you're borrowing money, you want the lowest rate possible because that gives you the lowest amount that you have to pay back. All right? Now, let's look at it on the flip side. When would you want a high interest rate?
When you're dealing a car.
Okay, when you're what?
Selling a car.
If you're financing it, if you're financing a car or house on your own, then yeah, a higher interest rate would make you more money. What else? What's the obvious one?
A saving account.
Okay, a saving account or when you're investing your money. Anytime you're investing your money, anybody heard of the stock market?
I have.
Okay? Anytime you're investing money in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, okay, you want the highest interest rate possible because that will help your money grow. This formula helps you figure out how much your money is going to grow or how much money you will owe over the length of a loan. So as far as real life application, guys, this is as straight and clear as it comes as far as how you're going to use this in real life, okay? Now, thankfully, there is an app for this, okay? But you cannot use the app on your quiz or your test. You have to actually be able to calculate it. All right, now let's move on to example 2. Now, in example 2, okay, notice that now we're finding the interest rate. Now, think back with me for a second, back to earlier in chapter 9, when we were dealing with the proportions, the percent equation. Sometimes we found A, right? Sometimes A was what we didn't know. Sometimes we solved for B. Sometimes we solved for P. So this is the simple interest formula is much the same thing. Sometimes we'll be asked to calculate the interest. Sometimes we're trying to find the original principal amount. Sometimes we're trying to find the rate, and sometimes we'll solve for the time. We can solve for different parts of this formula. And in this case, we're solving for the rate. All right, so let's read this one together and we'll solve it. It says you deposit $600 into a 6-month certificate of deposit. After 6 months, the balance is $618. Find the simple annual interest rate. Well, there's something different about this problem. Well, for one, it's asking me to solve for the interest rate. But two, it's given me the ending balance, all right, after the term of this certificate of deposit. The reason it did this is because did it tell us how much? Did it tell us straight out how much interest it made?
Yeah.
No, it didn't. It didn't tell us how much interest it made. It said that you put $600 in, and at the end it's $618. But it doesn't tell you the exact amount in interest. That's because you have to use basically the ending balance and the beginning balance to calculate that. So the first step is to figure out exactly how much interest you made. So you subtract the ending amount minus the beginning amount, and you get the amount in interest. The reason you have to do this is because you can only have one variable in the formula. You can't solve something where you don't know the interest and you don't know the rate. There can only be one unknown variable, and they've asked us to solve for rate. So now I'm going to plug it into my formula, I equals PRT. Now my interest is $18, so I fill the 18 in for I. My principal amount was the $600. I do not know the rate. And now the time is interesting because my rate is calculated annually, and I've already established that annually means yearly, but they've told me the amount in months. Anytime they give you the amount of time in months, you have to put it over 12. So in this case, it would be 6 over 12. Now, with a fraction like this, if you can convert it to a decimal and it's a clean conversion, go ahead and convert it to a decimal. Sometimes it's not, and you have to leave it as a fraction. Okay? Now, I know this is a lot of information, but just hang in there with me. 18 equals commutative property of multiplication says I can rearrange them 600 times 0.5, which is 6/12 as a decimal, times r. Now, what's 600 times 0.5? I'm just going to multiply it out now. What's 600 times 0.5? It's 300. So 18 equals 300R. Now you solve for R by dividing both sides by 300. And R equals what? R equals what decimal? It's going to be a decimal. 0.06. And then as a percentage, R would equal 6%. Okay? So really there's two steps here. Okay? The first step is to calculate the interest, and the second step is to figure out the rate, but you've got to apply what you know from the word problem. Okay? So that's how you would find the interest rate. And you do have a couple problems like that on your homework tonight, but you'll know how to do them because we went over it right now. Okay, now I want you, everybody have this down? I want you to try one. I'll go ahead and pause the recording so you can try. We'll go through it, and then we have one more example. All right, so I'm going to use my simple interest formula. Okay, we're starting again. Interest equals principal times rate times time. All right, now I need to calculate the interest first. Okay, so to find interest, I need to multiply the principal of $500 times the rate. And this is just like example 2 times the time out of 12 months because it's 10 months.
So whenever it's months, you put it over 12?
Whenever it's months, you put it over 12. Okay, so now let's multiply it out. What's 500 times 0.06? It's 30. Now, since 10 over 12 works out to be a repeating decimal, I'm going to leave it as a fraction. Remember, if it comes out clean, you can change it to a decimal. But in this case, I need to multiply it. Now, you could reduce 10 twelfths, or you could cross-reduce. If you didn't do either, you should have ended up with 300 over 12, which then would equal $25. That's the amount of interest. Okay? That's the amount of interest, and that's how you would calculate it. But that's not the total balance. The total balance must be added back to the original. So 500 plus 25 gives me an ending balance of $525.
So you always add it.
If it's asking you for the balance, yes. Okay? Okay, now example 3. In example 3, you put $750 into a certificate of deposit. Your simple annual interest rate is 4%. You receive a check for the interest at the end of each year. How long will it take to earn $150 in interest? Well, in this example, it gives us the principal, it gives us the rate, it gives us the interest, and now I need to find the time. Okay? So just like the percent problems where we solve for different parts of the formula, okay, well, that's what we're doing here. Now we're solving for time. So I need to make sure that I plug these numbers into the correct parts of the equation. So the interest is $150. The principal is $750. The rate is 0.04, and we don't know the time. So now we just multiply it out. What's 750 times 0.04?
Oh, wait. Let me go.
What's 750 times 0.04? It is 30. Now we solve for t by dividing both sides by 30. And t equals 5 years. Okay, so you just have to look at what is the unknown part. Okay, and back in example 2, we had to calculate interest before we could figure out what the annual rate was. And if you understand that, that's everything you need to know for 9.8.